Right, today is the second day of the Devolution Conference, which coincides with the International Women's Day. Notably, we don't have a woman governor and only 7 women deputy governors. It is estimated that 80% of women in Kenya live in rural areas, playing invisible national economic development roles. The underrepresentation of women in key decision-making areas continues to prevent them from achieving significant impact on many national and individual outcomes.
Nilisumbukana na mtoto kila saa, mtoto ananisumbua, lakini vile walifika huko mtoto baba yake kuingia tu ndani, hakuna kitu yenye waliongea, hakuna. Walisimama, waliamushwa tu na wasimama, alafu wanaambia huyu mshikiwa ati uko na bahati, mlalamisha amekufa, kesi yake hakuna, na wanaenda. Ninabaki tu hivyo.
Sijui kama serikali kama inaweza shughulikia mtu kama huyo ako na haki yake, mtoto kama huyo ako na haki yake, na afike wakati ateseke mpaka kuteseka kwake kufika mpaka kifo yake pia ipitie kwa mateso tu. Sasa hapo serikali sijui naweza sema nini mbele ya serikali ndio isikie mimi nilikuwa na shida mpaka saa hii inanisumbua kwa roho na inanisaidia.
Right, welcome back, ladies. Somalia just had an election, I think, on February 8th. And they also have a 30% gender rule. And Somalia, being Somalia, with all that happens there, are at 25% of the 30. And Kenya, we are celebrated as being the hub in our region, the most forward-thinking. But we seem to lag behind when it comes to including women, who are 50% of our population in any of our decisions. Wangari, what's your take on all of that?
I think, and this also comes down to, we see a lot of cases where people are not trusting of women in leadership, men and women alike. We find a lot of women not even in elections, women not supporting other women in electoral positions. And I think that's a real shame. And that is almost also an argument for affirmative action. If you put someone in that position to demonstrate to people, for people to have that experience of a person that they're not typically used to leading, being in a leadership position, then you start getting a lot more buy-in in terms of that, of women representation in leadership. The other thing is women are almost indirect heads of the households, because in a lot of counties, especially some of these rural counties, the men are absent. They're either out in other counties, maybe looking for work, or they're deadbeat in whatever ways. And they have to make decisions on food, how to get water, education, other social issues. But they make these micro decisions in the household, right. But their needs are not represented at a higher level, where they have their women reps or the government actually looking at these needs of the women who are... Speaking of women reps, we have a few. We have our own Nichosha Betty right here in Nairobi. Yeah. What is your assessment, Betty, of what they've done so far? Because we have a few in leadership who are there by virtue of affirmative action. But people will always tell you, but what have they done?
Yeah, but you see, what have the men been doing?
Yeah.
I always find that an unfair question, because no one will ask you, what has this MP done when he's a man and whatnot.
You should always assess your leaders based on what mandate they have been given and what your expectations as a constituency. What did you expect them to do? Okay, what did you ask them to do? What did they say they would do? Yeah. Now here you are, you're focusing on 47 women, yeah, and there are like over 300 men there. No, sorry. There are over 200 men there, and they've always been in power. We've never had as many women as we have now. Right. What have they been doing?
True.
So, what would we have? In other words, my point is this, yeah? If you want to compare women, they're not as good leaders as men. Really, let's compare them.
I'm not saying they're not as good leaders. I'm just wondering if you can quantify their actual contribution and to actually contribute to this argument of ours. We have a guest in INM, and her name is Naitore Madhenge. She's actually a lawyer who works for Equality Now, who works with women's issues day in and day out. Naitore, do you think that our female representation in the National Assembly has performed as we expected them to?
I'm actually of the view, I agree with what Betty was saying, yeah? That in a very hostile environment, we keep on asking what women are doing, what have they done, yet we don't measure some of the issues that they've had to go through or they have to deal with even before they get to those positions of parliamentarians or politicians in whatever capacity. But just to answer your question is, it's not been easy for them. We've had those who've done a great job. And just to mention but a few, we've had a number of bills that have been tabled in Parliament, even if they did not pass to be enacted in law. We've seen their contribution. We can mention the bill that was proposed by Honorable Florence Mutua, which was shot down due to misinterpretation. And if you listen to Parliament that day, you can get where most of the male parliamentarians come from a very misinformed position, which makes it very difficult for women to support or to sponsor bills in Parliament that can be of great benefit to women. A case of, an example is that bill on sexual violence that would have really added to the already existing gains in the Sexual Violence Act.
Right, Naitore, but what do you think would make the path easier? What would clear the way for women to be able to make impactful decisions in Parliament? Because we know it's male-dominated and it's going to be hard and it's always going to be, but is there a silver bullet that can get us at least to the next level?
Yes, women parliamentarians need a lot of support, and they also need to strategize as a unified front. And once we have that, and by support, I mean it's from all of us, from the communities and from the civil society, from the civil societies, from all professions. Whenever a member of Parliament proposes or is sponsoring a motion in Parliament, we need to do our due diligence on that specific bill. We can have barazas or community awareness on that bill. If such a bill is supported by the community members, then it becomes very easy, even when it comes to the floor of Parliament. And for me, I also need, as the theme for the International Women's Day is that we need to be more bold, is that I think that women parliamentarians and all those in political seats need to invent new and creative ways, because it's very clear that or whatever we've been using before hasn't been working for us women. So there's need for new strategy and very innovative and pragmatic approach to the issues that affect women, even in Parliament.
Harriet, this is Wangari. Just a quick question. When I think of how women are put in public office, what is your thinking in terms of how elections are run and how women are able to get political positions in terms of how elections are run? So what do you think of putting party lists in terms of making sure that women are actually represented in certain aspects of elections versus allowing the electorate to elect women based on their own judgment?
First of all, I have a huge problem with the way elections are run in this country, right from nominations, whereby it's like a mad place, it's like a marketplace whereby the strongest gets the certificate. We even have had cases of whereby women who sell through the nominations never get that certificate and someone else is given, preferably a man. So we need to, each political party needs to streamline its nomination processes, but that needs to start from the top level, yeah? From all the institutions that have the mandate to manage elections in this country. Because when there's violence, when there's so many violence that is inflicted on women during elections, when women are insulted to the extent that they cannot even stand in campaign rallies, then it creates a very fragile and also hostile environment for women. And then, you know, our laws, our electoral laws are not very strong when it comes to protecting women candidates. So people get away with so much. Voter bribery. Most women may not have as much money to do that voter bribery. The nomination fees for the top political seats, like the governor, the presidential candidates,
just allow me to cut you short there.
Are very prohibitive.
Just allow me to cut you short there, because you mentioned, you spoke a little bit about violence, which really stands at the core of women's rights. And 1 out of every 3 women in Kenya has experienced violence before attaining the age of 18. This is what the Youth and Gender Affairs here, Cicely Kariuki, says, speaking at the celebrations to mark the International Women's Day at the KICC, Kariuki noted that gender-based violence remains a stumbling block towards achieving equality and empowerment of women today, although great strides have been achieved. Now, in the rural parts of the country, defilement cases often escape prosecution. And what would you see, what would see an increase to the access to justice in such cases is the question today.
We have not been able to achieve that 50-50 planet, that gender equality. We've not been able to achieve it because we don't have that political goodwill, we don't have that support that we need, and not just at political level. Go even in our churches. Listen to the kind of preaching that goes on. You know, mwanamke lazima utii, lazima be submissive. Sarah was submissive. All these things scares. Yeah, it's just everywhere. And even at home level, in our homes, what kind of things do parents tell the boy child? And what kind of things do parents tell the girl child, even in schools? Yeah, we are kind of society favors the males.
All right, Naitori, I know that advocacy in such cases where violence has been instigated, to young girls is something that your organization is actively involved in. What can you say is the reason that we see, either lack of prosecution of such cases or, prosecution that really do not end in punitive actions?
Number one is interference from the victims' family members and the community members. We've even received cases whereby a family that is willing to follow up a case, they are lynched or their house is burnt. So that's one thing. And again, the criminal justice system, as I've just said, is very lengthy, and the costs incurred. Some of the girls are not even in a position to afford fare to go to the court to witness. And when you get to the courts, how some of our courtrooms are structured, it's very intimidating for a girl or for a woman to testify when the perpetrator is right there looking at them. So as our organization Equality Now, we've put in place measures, or we try to advocate for more friendlier courts, whereby even such cases of defilement or rape are heard in camera.
All right, and would you say that there is enough, capacity building and information, to people down at the villages and in the rural areas? Because I just came from Busia myself just last week, and it seems like so many of those young girls who are defiled and their families don't even know where to start with regard to accessing justice where defilement has occurred.
We have done a lot of awareness raising, but it's still not enough. And as Equality Now, one of the counties we work in is Busia County. And if we look at where we started, when we started engaging with various stakeholders in Busia County and where we are now, there's been progress in terms of knowledge, in terms of reporting of cases, and in terms of this, the girls and the women being aware of their rights. However, there's need for more capacity building. There's need for engaging the judges, the prosecutors, because it's a chain. And if you leave out one service provider, then it means that this girl or this woman will not be in a position to access justice.
Okay, Naitori, I just wanted to ask, in terms of increasing the ability of the police or the reporting agency where you go and report a case of defilement to be able to respond to it. And I'll give the example of Justice for Liz, where Liz, a 16-year-old girl, was assaulted by 6 boys, and she was raped, and then she was thrown into a pit latrine. I think they broke her back or something like that. And thereafter, the boys were reported at the police station, and basically nothing happened for a long, long time until we started advocacy for her. So my question is, how can we improve the capacity or the response of the police or the reporting agency to such cases? Because even if you improve the knowledge of the rights of women to the woman herself and her children, when she's going to the police, if they don't take action, then, you know, still we won't have access to justice. The police themselves will not follow up the case, and they'll not make sure that it reaches the prosecution level, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the ways that this can be cured is by ensuring that sexual and gender-based violence cases, the training starts at the training colleges where these police officers are trained. So you have it anchored in the curriculum so that by the time this police officer is graduating, they already know some of the cases that they may experience or that may be reported to them and how to deal with them. The other problem is, at times we do capacity building of police officers. Let me give an example, like in Busia or in Nairobi, you build the capacity of these police officers to receive cases of sexual and gender-based violence, but a year later, this police officer is taken to another station or to another, maybe that station may not be necessarily the usual police station where they have to receive cases. He can be taken even to the airport or elsewhere, whereby there are no cases where he may not be necessarily receiving those cases of SGBV. So in this instance, our suggestion, or our proposal rather, is to have a specific police officers who are mandated to handle cases of sexual and gender-based violence, a very distinct unit from the rest, but within the police, within the same police command that deals with cases of sexual and gender-based violence, so that if this is where you feel you can best serve Kenyans under this unit, even if you're transferred to Mandera, to Nairobi, you'll still be handling the cases of sexual and gender-based violence, and it will be very easier for the organizations that are interested and keen in empowering such police officers to do so.
Many thanks. My Tore Madenge there, who is a program officer and a lawyer as well, working with equality now, just shedding issues of interest as we mark the International Women's Day.
Right, and tonight on our Twitter poll, we asked you, do you support the government's call to employ doctors from abroad? Do you support the government's call to employ doctors from abroad? And 32% of you say yes, and 68% of you say no. And there you have it. That's where we wrap up the show. Thank you so much, Wangari Mwikia. Thank you, Betty Waitherero, and of course, my lovely co-host Sharon Momanyi.
Right.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good night.
Good evening.
Thanks.